show us.
It's not a formal meeting, it's an informational meeting, an information gathering meeting. There will be no play or anything. Put it over there. So everybody be 50 and be. And opening comment.
No, I think we've been toying around with this comprehensive plan now for quite a while. And I understand there's some people with some other ideas, and I don't know exactly what they are. But maybe if we throw them out, if somebody's got some other ideas, then we'll have to probably decide whether they're more specific to, let's say, codes or zoning, and they shouldn't be in this, or there's something that, even in a generic way, you want to add it. So that's kind of like where we are. So I guess I would just say whatever you guys want to talk about. Somebody, if somebody thinks they got something to add here, they probably should.
Look at me.
Well, because I did something if you ride over here.
Well, I do have something to add. Janet and I have been conspiring. Don't be afraid. It's a friendly conspiracy. As people have noted, this idea of an arts district has been floated before. And I think it would be a good thing to add to the comprehensive plan to have it incorporated into the zoning code. And the way to do that, I think, is by creating a floating zone, which is permissible. Has to be carefully crafted, though. The floating zone is a set of criteria that you can apply for. They aren't applied to any particular designated spot. They just exist in the atmosphere, I think, within one of these things I read, until somebody applies it to their property. And then it permits a particular use or it can waive existing requirements for that lot. I think we would like to see it concentrated on the northern end of the village in North Burlington. There's some commercially type things there now, the DPW, the school, there's two-family houses, modern houses, and there's a couple of older houses. It's not really, that connected to the historic core, so it wouldn't be, it's certainly not likely to be used for residential purposes. There's a number of very small lots that are too small to be buildable. They have sheds or barns on them now. So the idea is that the village would develop a very coherent set of regulations that would constitute the zone, the floating zone. And then if somebody wished to apply them to their property, you would come before I think it has to be the board, and make the case for being designated this particular floating zone.
Would that be a special permit? Go before the zoning board?
I believe I read that it would need to go before the legislative body. It says, because the floating zone this is from a publication by Department of State. It's a really great summary of the current land use things. I made some copies which I can share with you of this particular section. Because the floating zone is not part of the zoning map until a particular proposal is approved, the establishment of the boundary on the zoning map is a zoning amendment requiring the approval of the local legislative body. So you're actually amending the zoning code, so I think that would have to be the board. But we can confirm that.
But that, it doesn't, would we have to specify either in here or in a subsequent zoning change, the types of
you or somebody working for you would write what constitutes this particular float zone, and you can call it the arts district, even though it could be applied to any property, it could apply for this designation. It doesn't have to be over there.
I've seen it called entertainment ones.
Yeah.
But before anybody asks for it, you have to develop a really tight set of regulations about what could and couldn't happen there. So, for example, not suggesting this at all, but you might say non-residential structure, you know, that you don't want anyone sleeping, maybe you don't want somebody sleeping there, maybe you do, I don't know, that is primarily used as work or studio space, and you can designate what's required for that. But it wouldn't necessarily have to adhere to the setbacks or lot size, or maybe you want to make it flexible in terms of parking. They wouldn't necessarily have to have parking on the property as long as they could point to some parking that would be available. I'm just throwing that out there. I know that's a hot idea.
But those issues don't need to be resolved tonight, right? I mean,
No.
the purpose of this is just to say,
I'm just,
is
my
this something
proposal
that we
is
want
that
to
you,
include?
right, I actually wrote up sort of a description.
Because if we do a very generic or general form, that for example, we could, there's certain sections which draft a comprehensive plan, we might insert that the village is encouraging, or we encourage the village to establish specific zoning that would
Well, read this over, I think I did actually use the word encourage.
I don't know, I don't know how to do it, but
I've been on this train for a while.
Yeah.
And number, on page 19, number 7, specifically mentioned encourage craft-related small businesses, so that might be a place to sort of experiment. And to pursue overlay or floating zone.
If I could just interject like a couple of things that I discussed with neighbors and artists. In my building, one of my intentions is to have classes for who's that, whoever wants to come, of all different kinds of arts. And Terry and Rachel and Conrad are, they are interested in having maybe workshops and other things in that area. We thought it would be a good use of the area to sort of bring it back to life. Because you sort of walk through there and it doesn't have quite the nice feeling that some other parts of the village have. So.
I was going to say, I also read up on, when I first thought about this, I was reading up on an overlay district. I did talk to Tom Peterson a little about it, who said we have the authority to set this up, and it would be good in the comprehensive plan to say our goal is to do this. And then the advantage of the, I hadn't at that time, that's what Tom read about the floating zone. The basic difference is the arts overlay district, which many places use. You pick an area, like say around the DM, the Department of Public Works, that whole from like Saratoga up and you name it an arts district. And then it can still remain it's an overlay district because keep the same zone it has, but there are additional benefits or negatives that they have to adhere to. The float zone is basically the same thing, but it wouldn't be restricted. So if you have an artist who's over here, it wouldn't be fair to you to move your work over there. So, but the advantage of doing it, the board doing it, creating a floating zone, is we create all the rules we want, and they can be whatever it works out to be. Maybe if you're in the historic, well, I don't know what that, but we would create it one time basically. You don't have to have somebody come in and say, I want a variance or zoning, I want to do something different on my property. We have a structure in place, and then artists could apply, or if somebody wants to use their home for art purposes upstairs, they could apply, and we would just have to look at it and say it meets, or somebody would have to look and say it meets the requirements of the plan, and then we would just vote on to add it to the district. So basically, it's a lot less work there. You create it once, and then you can apply it as needed as time goes on, or you can pull a house right out, and if somebody moves, you can say that's no longer in.
And I would note that the overlay zoning typically, it does attach to a designated spot, but it also usually adds to existing zoning. And it's usually more restrictions or more requirements in addition to what's there. A floating zone can have its own requirements and waive existing. So that would be relevant in particular to to smaller lots, like Jenna's lot might not be a buildable lot, but it could support the purpose that we're that we are aiming for. And I think the long-term goal is to create, if not a concentrated area, opportunities for artists to live and work in the village. I know I lived in a little space, I did a lot of art, and it was a constant issue of where to put things, and the kids and the paint and all that, it's just crazy. So, you know, perhaps there'd be shared spaces eventually, or I don't know. But I think it could only add to the character of the village, and it would be an opportunity to use a part of the village that really is kind of nothing to write home about at this point, and does present some problems in the future as these structures, you know. I know at least 2 owners that are just hanging on to these things. They're not maintaining them, they're not, you know, and they're going to, if and when they change hands, it would be nice to have an option for using otherwise unusable or undesirable land.
So one of the things I read about was, I think one that Lisa mentioned in here, is that if you have if a piece of property or an area is part of this zone, they can then much more easily apply for grants, which is the last item on here. That's really important. If you say, well, I want to take my barn and make something, well, you may not get a grant. If you say, this is barn in the arts district, whatever the name is, and it's much easier. The other thing is, you can also conceivably, we can encourage this in the future, maybe even like Arts Festival, maybe connected with this and perhaps maybe when Marks is going on, or the antique fair, you might have an area on the north end of town where people might be able to sell some things out of their house without it becoming a big business, and it can allow that.
I was at,
I have my hand raised. Being part, where this would be a part of markets, I don't know about the selling thing, that's a little.
Probably not during. She's saying probably not during.
Like markets, things like that kind of scares me.
That's going to be on the scope.
I
I really want to that somebody has
I just thought that was
they want to be able to sell their jewelry out normally at any time. They could do that without.
Yeah, that's totally fine, just not that one weekend.
Oh, no, I think that's okay.
This proposal is a way to take steps.
Denise was next.
Oh, sorry. Okay, she's so funny.
I was actually involved in Saratoga. They created an arts district on David Street, and they also have the practitioners, and I was involved in the early stages of that. And we're able to apply for grants. We do the community development block grant. I don't know if that can apply for this village or not, because it's been a while since I was on the committee. But what we did is we got funding for like street trees and curbing and things like that, and it just kind of finished things off. It was something to support the artists. So it was actually some interesting things. It's gone through waves, you know, it's like kind of, and then it had a surge and then it lulled off, and now they have like a resurgence of businesses down there, and it's a really nice experience to walk through there. It's kind of slower paced, and even they had some creative ideas to lead people to the arts district. They like had little silhouettes of feet, like leading on the trail on the sidewalks and stuff like that, which was really nice. And I think it's a great idea. I don't know. We were just walking by that the other day, and there was one of the barns, and I'm thinking, God, that'd be like a great dance space or something to rehearse in, if you could, you know, repurpose it, or, you know, that kind of thing. And I think there are definitely some possibilities there. So, I mean, you know, obviously, if there are any residents that would be impacted by traffic down the road or something like that, you have to take into consideration them as well. But it sounds like
That'd
it'd
be
really
really
great.
the part of the hearing of whether it would be appropriate for a particular property.
But, I mean, it sounds like a really great idea, but it sounds it could be, the specifics could be kind of complicated. So for the purposes of the document, I would think it's more generic reference, and that's where Eric suggested
We support
the idea of it,
creating it.
and then, of course, once we get past this, then we got to get into zoning and stuff like that, and that's where that would fit. Yeah.
Well, it does have to be crafted very carefully to avoid acquisitions as possible.
Yeah.
But I think it can be done, and I think we lose nothing by putting it in the
I
plan.
agree.
And it lays the groundwork for incremental every single property that applies for it is a decision that has to be made, so you can, weigh whether it meets the requirements and whether, like, a neighbor might object to having a well next door to them, so,
Would you be willing to come up with some language that we add to that specific section and
Well, I think this,
another paragraph or two or something like that?
I think this pretty much does it. You want to maybe do like the next step thing. I think you have long and short term.
I think when you're thinking of something simpler than this sort of comprehensive plan, is what I was wondering. And this should be a worksheet for the final, but I think what Tom, the first paragraph suggesting would be fine.
The first,
The first two paragraphs probably, the other one is more like a justification.
yeah.
And then I think the objectives are valid. You just need something short term, develop regulations, adopt regulations or something. I don't know what the language, exact language is.
The first two?
I think the first two paragraphs is probably sufficient here, maybe that go in the end.
We'll go right in there after, on page 19, item 7. And just plug the two paragraphs in there. The village,
Can you make it another number?
Yeah.
Get another number. Just move those numbers down, make this number 8.
Well, it should maybe be.
We didn't take the end of 7 off and make that 8. That's,
Yeah.
and encourage architectural and small businesses. No rate to begin.
Maybe
Encourage
those
architectural and small businesses.
under the village, under part 9 though, village zoning and design control district starting in 21. Isn't
I
that
thought that originally on page 20.
Oh, I see.
isn't that what this is?
There are 2 places we could go, I think. One is.
Well, zoning district.
Yeah, you could do like 19, new number 8 would be an objective for the village as a whole. And then I think what I just looked at earlier was on the next page 21 and 22, because the village zoning and control districts. You could have a section on page 22 after you have the zone district, design control district, floating arts district. You could have it right up there. The end of 22.
Right before purpose of the design control.
So that's actually part of the one right before. You have first zoning district, then you have design, control district, and sub-district.
And then you have access and goals.
And the floating district, I guess, Tom later, but the floating district probably in the blank space below that. Let me see,
I kind of think it needs to go in 9 and 10, under the zoning and design control districts. And then I'm sorry, it starts on 21.
yeah,
And then objectives and goals within the design control and do the longer.
I'd be happy to look at that, kind of look at that. So here's my thought this week on where Gary first mentioned, which is page 19. You put a sentence or something in there, like number 8, it's a little more specific as one of the objectives. It's just that kind of turns the end of 7 into its own thing. And then on page 22, in effect, it might make a slight adjustment. I'll see whether this is considered one of the sub-districts or not. We added a little more, something, not making that part of the school, but a little more than and we put the rest of it there, the fuller thing there. That sounds good, you know what I'm saying, Lydia?
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds okay, I can have work with them on it, but I get something to you, we look at it again as a board later.
Yes, I'll.
Yeah, maybe I could, my house is right there.
Yeah, it is.
That's back south.
There you go.
But isn't that a lot of?
Plenty of parking over there. Just to say you could.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it, the 3-stage, 3-tier parking.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
I'm trying to see the auditorium.
All concrete.
Oh, gee,
Electric lights, we get out of the electric lights. Oh my God. We want park rental, you know.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Denise says something.
I gave some input a long time ago. The thing I just wanted to pull out at this point is, I know we're not a city like Saratoga, but we are a community that is obviously going to be affected, and is affected by what's going on in the environment, and just sustainability, having a vision for sustainability for the village. I mean, obviously, we're all care about sustaining and preserving the village. And, but there may be ways to look at how the village operates and its policies and things like that, even zoning decisions. Is that in the best interest of sustaining the well-being of the village, especially with development going on? And I've given an example from like Saratoga's comp plan, but I don't even think we might not even qualify for climate smart communities, but I just looked at that as I read about it. But I like some of the ideas in there, and like committing to an evolving process of climate action, and thinking about ways that we can do things, whether it's recycling or there may be some other ways to enhance community resilience and prepare for the effects of climate change. I know there's been some ideas like, oh, could there be solar panels, could there be this? I've heard different things, but I'm not saying it would be anything specific, but maybe an intention that's part of the mentioning sustainability, and that part of this plan is about sustaining and maintaining the village. But I think there would be, I would like to see something involving the environment and all the changes that we go through. And how can we make decisions based on that? You know, the research and getting input from the community, what they would like. Starting the conversation, not imposing anything, but starting the conversation. Because I think we all can benefit from it.
Certainly, it hasn't never. I don't know. I was looking at some of your stuff before, and I saw that, and there's a couple of references to committees and updating this thing and all that kind of stuff. And if we included that, I was trying to figure out where we might put that, something like that. Mm-hmm. You know, where the village is interested in, continuing. One of the goals is sustainability and caring for these kinds of things, and putting a paragraph or two in somewhere in here.
Objectives for the
Objectives, okay, yeah.
What page is that?
Okay. 19, yeah.
Oh,
And maybe we should do a couple of drafts. That wouldn't be a bad idea. It's a good spot for it, too. Objectives to draft a couple with brevity in mind.
Oh, totally. No, it's just an intention.
Because
it's an overarching intention.
Yeah, this is not really specific. Then we'll get into the specifics once we.
Right, if we want to do a solar thing, that would be specific.
Right, that would be more.
This should be.
Yeah, but that's fine. I can do it. I can also ask for some input from people how to do it in a way that's brief, but with the intention and
Right. A couple paragraphs, that's it.
Okay.
I think I need that. From my experience with comprehensive plans, the major, I guess, practical use is when people are fighting in court and they say, I want to do this, and somebody says, no, you can't do that because the comprehensive plan says you can't do that. And of course,
Because they have,
they look for it. It's the first thing they look for.
when I didn't know anything about comprehensive plans, but I got interested because in Saratoga they have that green belt that prevents the urban sprawl, and they had the comprehensive board split between all developers and real estate people, and then on the other side, preservation, like land preservation people. It was a huge controversy. And to have that historically in the document to refer to, they ultimately won out. It was like one vote. Then they could have like just developed in ways that had never been envisioned before. So it's really, it wasn't specific, but they had the zoning, but they were looking to change it so they could affect the changes in the zoning.
I mean, Tom, I think you would want to be wrong when one of the more recent proposals, may have been up at the end of Albany Avenue. You spoke about one of these recent proposals, and you pointed to how that kind of development goes against what what we already have in the comprehensive plan. That was one of the arguments the board would say if you know.
This is like, going back over the same language again, the comprehensive plan is essentially a template.
Right.
And then you jump off the pedal to be specific with all your stuff, and which is going to be a part of the battle or long battle. But yeah, so something like that, that way if anybody puts back at some point, that says, no, wait a minute, you know, the village, you know, comprehensive plan, we're supporting this kind of sustainability, or whether it's green space, or whether it's arts, or whatever, we have it there.
And also in the spot of it, when you're talking about having this in here for grant funding, well, if we have this in our comp plan, that may qualify, I don't, you know, we can look into it, but for grant funding, because like, I know, what to say, Paul Tonko is like really interested in environmental stuff, and I don't know if he qualified for something federally, but there could be something that could go on, possibly at a state level, we might get funding for it.
Yeah, so would you be kind enough to put some numbers together?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe we'll all maybe forward to Paul,
Okay.
or however we want to do it. Who has the latest word document? Yeah, because we want to keep it one, we want to just have one document.
You got the latest Word document?
I don't have it, I don't believe that word.
I have the document somewhere, electronic.
I can look at it, and it'll often go to you to update.
Yeah.
And then the board will anyway, say, you know, I said we don't, but if it's creating something paragraph, but then if you just be specific where you think would be the best place to put it in the current plan.
Okay, I mean, you
And
guys,
then I can look at it too, and then I'll share it, and we can, then you can put it in or whatever.
Because we have the 10 working documents.
I'll keep it separated, and then you do what I think, say the additions, and I'll share that with others. And
I mean, I don't, you know, to be honest with you, I feel for what we try to do, including pretty much everything. And I don't really have, these additions are great, but I don't really have a problem with the document other than including this new material. I don't know.
you don't have a problem with it.
With what's in here
Yeah,
now,
the whole thing.
and with the additions.
That's all I thought too.
Yeah.
one thing it would be, I think be helpful for me and also going forward is if there's some way to have an introduction about kind of like who was on the committee, how this evolved over a period of time, we had a series of public meetings, just so people understand the process, because first of all, I don't know, because I'm relatively new, but also people just not knowing what a compact involves comprehensive plan, they don't have no idea, and they're reviewing it, they can understand what we do.
Probably 12 paragraphs on the page.
I don't know myself.
Yeah, it would be like, interesting to see before everything else.
Yeah.
Like a cover page and then the second page before the meat of the.
Exactly, and then you could, and you say, you conclude with,
Yeah.
it was voted on a certain day by these board members, blah, 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 blah. And then put it like that. I assume that's the ultimate step is the board votes.
Right.
And it's kind of, and then you continue with that.
That's O2 was completed in O2. Do I still have that?
What was all the meetings we had?
Oh, 2000, December of 2000.
What about all the meetings and the discussion of the master plan with, is that different?
No, that was us. That's where.
Because that wasn't 2002, I didn't.
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't 2017 either, it was a few years ago, we had a lot of meetings.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And 2017 would be annual.
No, but that's like a year, right? It's like 2017, 2018, and 2002. Saying there was something else in there involved that very definitely we did hear. There were many meetings, there was a lot of discussion, Harry was very involved.
You might be thinking of the.
Was it just, was it open space?
That was adopted in 2011.
Yeah.
That was
Okay, that one, right.
right.
Because we did have a bunch of meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea to have some of the reports document. The first meetings were held in 2017, so.
Right, but I'm saying, isn't that part of the history of this?
That's what we were talking about, should that be, because it's village policy, so should that be an addendum or an appendix to the comprehensive plan?
That's already been voted on.
Yeah.
Should no minutes in here, was to say
Yeah.
that, is there anything about spaces here that, I don't know if attached lawn, I don't know how long that was. But open space is kind of very long, it's you can refer to it, it's obvious to the open space plan, I refer to open space
Yeah.
as C,
Well,
open space plan.
let's get the other stuff, and then see if we can find another way to just say, you also reference, you should also reference where it has an appendix, and then add
Adopted in the open space plan.
something like that. You know, so you have to, essentially have the two documents together. You know, so there'd be no question that if it is another document. You know, so somebody just created a comprehensive plan and didn't know about it.
Yeah, because I didn't know where.
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah, maybe we should just include, have an appendix, or include as an appendix, so that the other one could be.
I'll take a look and see if it's a duplicate, because it's quite possible that
Yeah.
pretty much everything is duplicated.
Yeah.
Or at least if we're talking about the gestation of this document, that we could talk about that had happened.
So, yeah, I don't think anything any of us are talking about is, I mean, once you get off this, then you gotta deal with road, beating the road,
The actual law.
the actual laws and zoning.
Yeah.
Don't wait, just wait. I remember we sat here for, when Terry and Dominic and Chris and I, and going over the definitions, code definitions. Oh, and when we would go for meetings and meetings, talking about what's the definition of a family? Or dwelling? Or parking spot? That's where it really is, that's where it gets tough.
I haven't actually read the whole plan, but am I the only one in the village wants to drill for water and sell it?
Oh, no, I think that's a great idea.
Well, you're probably not the only one.
No, you're not alone.
Come up with a business plan, and we'll come up with a big business plan and.
Well, Walterville,
Definitely,
they need water. So, Walterville.
Sparkling special water.
Oh, that kind.
Brown Lake water.
Yeah.
Brown used to have the best water. We had it, we still did, listen, we still do.
They compared it to, I think, one of the springs in Saratoga was on that level. They were like similar kind of springs.
It was an uncovered reservoir, and for years, they made people get, that have an uncovered reservoir, had to get out of the exemption. And they gave us one every time they were just like, yeah, it's great, the water's awesome.
Oh.
So,
Whatever happened to the spring at the Methodist church?
Some people think
it got nine I heard.
I ended up on an old property that I used to live in, which is the derelict blue house. Some people think
Working down right now.
There's a lot of water.
Because they had to go down 1,400 feet to get water. That's a long way to go.
Yeah. And it wouldn't it like a very high mineral? Yeah, sulfur.
Yeah, it was like Saratoga water. It's great, like a sulfur.
True Saratoga water is smiling,
Yeah. It's a fire taste.
bubbling.
So I don't know, we got our marching orders?
So what's the process now? Like, is this the final public hearing?
No, this isn't a public hearing. This is
Or
a
public conversation? Oh, okay.
This is just a community conversation.
Okay. Are you gonna have one that's separate like this?
Put something together, we're ready to have a final meeting and vote on, we have a public hearing, right, before we do that. Is that what it was?
We've already had,
We had one, but I don't think I had another one for anything.
I don't think it would hurt, I mean, I hate to swing the process along, you know, because somebody, but, you know, it shouldn't be the way it works, but you know somebody's gonna come in with another idea.
But if we get it to another stage and the board feels we're ready to have final discussion, we want to vote on it, we might want to have a public hearing
Sure.
before that meeting.
Sure, yeah. But let's get some kind of draft together.
Yeah, we got to do the next phase of the draft.
So the case of here, you will give to Paul, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then Paul will give
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
and Lydia, is Lydia there for you?
Well, I'll check, you know.
We can
You can't believe how many.
I know you took a lot out, but
I
there's
took 1,000 comments out.
more could go.
Are you a comical?
No,
Is it extra?
the guy over there, but he loved golf.
I like an honest comments, but this is, yeah, you did a good job. You're still smart.
So when was the last time one of these was done?
2,000.
So about what? How long have you been working on this one?
2 years, 2013.
Yeah, somewhere in that.
We don't get out, we suggested to add a paragraph that says when it was starting, who's working on, and we'll vote for
Our
it.
public hearing was at October 18th, 2017, so I got my notes for it.
Some work was done before that.
Yeah, so we were working on it probably 2 years. 16? Diane.
2.5 years.
And this is, you know, half the length of the other one. I think we accomplished the same thing. And with the addition of even more. Progress.
Yeah, usually, I mean, you can revise it, but usually about 5 years, isn't it?
They suggest, yeah, they suggest that it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on how much is going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Might need to, yeah.
So it'll probably take us at least a couple of years to, you know, fine tune the other things we got to do after this.
5 years now. Route 9 is built from the end of the road all the way up to Mall. So we might have some other needs. Not on this side, no.
No, that's why I think it's really important that this really kind of set our parameters of how we want, what's the vision? How do you want this place to look in 20 years?
And the point of these developments say it doesn't, that usage just doesn't fit what we're trying to do with the village in that way.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about, like, I know you have a comp plan, a lot of people are like, I don't know what a comp plan is, I'm not going to that boring thing. But there may be a way to have some type of conversation that's fun. I don't know if somebody can help kind of make that happen, but I've seen it in other communities where, like, you actually get a lot of people together and start brainstorming, be creative, and say, well, what do you imagine? What do you imagine? You know, those kind of things where it's just, it starts to just bring people together and kind of envision, and people buy in and they get excited. And it's not saying you have to make any decisions, but it starts to air out what people's, you know, what their ideas are and what they care about, but in a more of a group.
Well, we did.
So you're saying this isn't fun?
I mean, well, no.
What you're saying is you're going to have a party.
You can have a party. You can have a party. Well, we have had public hearings, and we have, you know, worked this and had a lot of input. And at a certain point, we have to say,
Oh, yeah, no. I'm not saying this, don't, I don't think you go ahead on that. I'm just thinking as a community, as this is evolving, instead of just having it on like Facebook, I think it would be a lot better if there's ways to do it that would be fun. Like you have some food, you do some interesting conversational tools that
Really, that may be a good thing. You talk about how keeping this in general possible is a reason for doing that, but then if you go into specific area, specific concept, whether it was, you know, the environment or art or whatever, then you have to do a focus on that before, you know, as part of developing an actual, you know, actual decision that's made and people are, you know, before we do something specific in one of these areas.
You done?
Committee work it out.
Organize something like that?
Okay, all right, well, I think about that.
Any other comments?
Anybody want to ask about anything related to this? Because it's not really, everybody's got their marching orders. So, you know, I guess we'll just throw it together and we'll have another, we'll put a kind of semi-final, final draft together and then have
You meant to say we'll craft.
we'll craft.
Not build.
Yeah, and then we'll have another ballot. Yes.
Is there anything in here about things for the children in the village?
Other than preserving the parks and the recreational, but again, it's not specific. We don't go say we want to build more playground.
actively maintain our.
It's in here though.
Oh, yeah.
So you could.
It's all over.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. It's
It's not.
it's heavy on preservation, it's heavy on recreation,
Okay.
stuff like that.
She had a pretty good idea a while ago. Some of the parks around have like a fitness course. And she was saying maybe put one along the bike path. Jump on or little thing,
Yeah.
They
something like that.
have those.
That's for everybody, not just kids.
Right.
There was a section here about parks and common space
Oh, okay.
on page 7.
I've already started writing out stuff like that.
Yeah, because when they finish their time, they great ideas somewhere. That specific thing of doing fitness course, we would necessarily, we want to make sure this
Right.
supports that.
I just didn't see anything.
We would have to sort of focus on that. I think you're taking those.
Well, that, not in a lot of detail, but right, that's what we can do later.
So you were actually saying you wanted to encourage supporting children, not the opposite, right?
Exclude children.
The more they have to do.
That's
Right.
I want to go home and eat my chicken.
Excuse me?
What, again? And broccoli.
Just not my chickens.
No, I don't. I leave those things alone, I go by.